criminal defense attorney Jo-Anna Nieves. Listen, Michael and Jo-Anna, I'm having a hard time listening at this point because he's saying, oh, I should have just stayed there and got the lawyer to deal with custody. You think? Regardless of the reason that this jury finds he did it, he shot and killed his girlfriend, the mother of the 2 children. But we see none of that emotion in this interrogation video.
Right, Judge Ashley. And the other thing is, like, he's so calculated in what he's saying. He's asking, like, is this a trap question? What are you really getting at? I feel like you're trying to get something out. So rather than seeing the emotion, you see, like, that deliberate calculation in his answers that I find that the jury is going to view as pretty off-putting when you're in the middle of explaining why you shot the mother of your children in the head.
Yeah, I don't see how they just don't reject this whole thing out of hand, this idea that, I mean, he seems to blame her for everything. But let me ask you this, Jo-Anna, is there a scenario, and we know that you do have a right to use deadly force to protect children or someone else from being kidnapped. I haven't quite heard that scenario in his description, but certainly there is a scenario where that would be okay.
I agree. I think we're lacking in some facts at this point. You know, one of the things that stands out is he turns and gets this gun and grabs the child out of her hands and then pulls the trigger and shoots her. Even if it's simultaneous, what we're dealing with is his prior mentions that when he tried to pull the child, it was in a bear hug and he couldn't get her away. We're going to have to see whether or not his actions were proportionate in this defense claim. And when you hear that he was able to pull the child away, there may have been a number of other steps he could have taken besides shooting her in her head.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't see how the mother's actions, as he describes them, rises to the level of the assumption that she's going to be kidnapping your kids. So that's one of the problems I think the jury is absolutely going to have.
And I agree with you. And Jo-Anna, that was my exact question for you, because I also found that he was blaming her for the way she was. He even made the statement, and I wrote down the quote, the mom and the dad having to raise a good child. So I started to feel like this is not a kidnapping. This is a custody. I don't like the way she is with my kids. And then he chose to kill her. Will the jury perhaps read it that way?
I do think that there's going to be this kind of perception of him being fed up that she's in his house, fed up that she won't leave, fed up that he's the one that has to play both roles, and that he just reached this point that this was the action he decided to take. I wonder what the defense is going to do here in terms of maybe playing into the PTSD military veteran role to try and humanize him and explain the conduct, because otherwise I think the jury is going to have a struggle accepting this defense.
I was surprised that we didn't hear more about that in their opening statement. We didn't hear a lot about it at all. All right, Jo-Anna, stand by. We're going to take a break here, folks. When we come back, we're going to have more of the Amber Alert murder trial against Dustin Duren. So please stay tuned to Court TV.
Let's go back together down to New Hampshire for day 3 of testimony in the Amber Alert murder trial. Dustin Duren is accused of killing the mother of his 2 daughters, and the mother's name is Caitlyn Naffziger. Then he took his 2 daughters, and that led to an Amber Alert.
Police found the children. They were unharmed with Duren about 200 miles away in a restaurant parking lot. Now, Duren says he killed Caitlyn in self-defense because she was trying to kidnap their children. Let's head back into the courtroom now. The jury is watching the defendant's interview with investigators where he's telling his story.
Never mind. I don't regret New Hampshire. And again, I had everything. I mean, Ellen and I, we were having a great time. But we had so much, immediately, I moved here, we have people helping us move. She's meeting friends here. We got into the Head Start program. I got my whatever. I got immediately got my driver's license was so temporary one. They haven't set up a new one yet. But yeah, I got just fully getting set up here, and there might actually be texts on this. I'm not sure if it was just conversations with my mom or if they were texts. But there might be texts. There are definitely conversations with my mom of just saying, I don't want to call this a success until Valen is here and Caitlyn is gone. And I remember at the very least having those conversations, but there might actually be text too, because we would have conversations of oh, she's threatening this and she's not going to bring Valen now, and now I'm saying, fine, put them on your taxes. Are you going to bring them here? And then yes. It was I was always so I'm not calling this a victory until this is done. Obviously, it was not.
I'm now having a question. The two quick questions, and I think we're pretty much done. So, just kind of listening to the last couple minutes of the conversation, I have to ask now, like, it was never your intent for Caitlyn to come here and kill her. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
And this was...
Because even the way you just mentioned the text message to your mom, I realize what you're saying, but at the same time listening to it, it's making me, now I have to ask that question.
But yes, without a doubt, never any intention to ever do anything. Absolutely not.
The other thing I do is I put myself in your head, and as I'm listening to you talk, the other question I have to ask is, could you have done anything in that moment where you're reaching for that gun, and from the moment you grab the gun to the moment you pull the trigger, could you, in your mind, have done anything differently to prevent racking around and pulling the trigger? Or is it just set in motion and done?
No.
Nothing you could do?
It was from the moment that it was like, nope. Like, just even before I grabbed it, it was like, nope. And then again, it was like, it was almost like, again, to Mark saying, it's like your training coming out. It was muscle memory, just not even in it. Well, whatever. It's dumb to even say that, because it's not like that's ever happened before. But anyways, yeah.
If you could do anything differently in the last 24 hours, what would you have done differently?
The house. Then it's, you're getting into hypotheticals. But then probably this situation is like at the restaurant or whatever, outside the restaurant, or like, again, because she very clearly, and I guess I didn't even say this, she very clearly had, no, I did. I guess I did. She very clearly had no intention for Brenda to pick her back up from the restaurant. She very clearly had intended to come back to my place without telling. And so that obviously factored in to where I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So I have to drive her to Hampton. So I have to drive her an hour and a half to Hampton and then drive 3 hours back to my place. And I get, you know what? Because I have to call it out. Like, are you getting at, do I regret shooting her?
Well, this is your opportunity to say if you do or not. So if you want to address that too, please do.
I don't know if I want to, for sure.
So I'm done with questions. I'm gonna have to look at the time, but I want to end the recording. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Well, I do want to say I'm not answering that last question of do I regret that. For either answer, it just feels like that's almost like that's like a trap question. Like
it's your choice to answer or not. I'm not trying to treat you pretty fairly when you answer whether you want to answer or don't want to answer. And if you don't want to answer, please don't feel like we're trying to get something out of you that you don't want to give us.
I guess just to end it, obviously all, you know, if I could talk more, I'll say. I have a very, I'll say this because you asked this already, and this is probably, okay. Answer it, and you can answer this first.
And now he's simply rambling, Michael. None of this is really making any sense.
It's almost as if he's enjoying it.
Yeah.
You know, just the opportunity just to talk.
Talk. All right, we're going to have more of the Amber Alert murder trial against Dustin Duren up next. Back to court in just a moment, but first, we are just moments away from our coverage of the murder of Julio Fulio trial in Florida.
And it's a good one. Prosecutors say that Alicia Andrews conspired with 4 gang members to kill the rapper last year. Right now, a detective is describing the area where the victim's car fled after that deadly shooting.
The area is covered by the Dodge Charger in flight from the shooting.
You can actually see, so essentially there's a dumpster, concrete structure with a dumpster. That's this right here, this tan rectangle object you can see. In between the right side, as you're looking at the photo, of that dumpster area and the building, there is a grassy area that's basically just big enough for a vehicle to fit through. You can actually see on the pavement here, the vehicle fluids that were leaking from the victim's vehicle as it fled. Basically fled, went right in between the dumpster area and the building, and wound up coming to rest where we found it.
All right. And that car that's parked there obviously wasn't there.
No, that's a police vehicle.
That's a police vehicle, okay.
All right, we will be bringing you 2 hours of testimony in the murder trial against Alicia Andrews starting at 5 p.m. Eastern. I agree, Michael. It's a great trial to watch, not one to miss.
Yeah, a lot of good issues there. All right. Now back to New Hampshire for more testimony in the Amber Alert murder trial for defendant Dustin Duren.
Duren is charged with second-degree murder connected to the deadly shooting of the mother of his children, Caitlyn Naffziger. He claims he shot in self-defense. Right now, let's go back into the courtroom for the end of Duren's interview with the police after he was arrested.
Can you even look up what my disability is? Can that even get brought up on court?
There's a way to do it, and it has to be in the middle of the situation. So in this particular case, I think it would have already had to been done. So it has to be what's called exigency. And by that, I mean like something like heat of the moment type thing, hot pursuit type thing. And there's a way to call, not the VA, but there's some our intelligence people can call and get stuff like with certain exigency. If that hasn't already happened, then there's ways to do it with search warrants and stuff too, but I'm sure it'll come up one way or another.
And I don't even know if it even matters. Well, anyways, whatever. I was gonna say, not even with that. I was just gonna say that starting back either 2016 or 2017, I started going into some very severe depression, and I did have a failed suicide attempt. This was before I met the kid. So there was a lot of me trying to find, I don't need to go into the whole thing, but it was a lot of me like what is the point? There's no purpose for me to live. And that was kind of where I was in this severe depression, and that's when this all happened. But after that happened, then my parents took me in to their place back in this, and that is when I met Caitlyn. And then when we had our first kid, that was when really it. Like this is why I'm here now. Okay. I don't even know. I'm debating whether I even want to say this. Because I think veterans, when you talk to veterans, they understand this. I'll just give this caveat and say it. Because I feel like if you're a veteran, you understand this. But I remember our very first Christmas to where Ellen she had just turned 1. And actually, this reminds me because this brings something up about Caitlyn. And we could honestly go down this whole road that I don't think Caitlyn cares about the kids. But Ellen's very first Christmas, Caitlyn left and went back to Minnesota. So it was just me and Ellen. And then, so obviously. But I remember at the time, I was still like, I won't get into the details, but some financial stuff came out. I was struggling with money. And so that Christmas, I couldn't really get Ellen anything. And so I took pictures, and there's pictures of me and Ellen when she's like opening up. Well, I think she had 2 toys. We had just this little Christmas tree. I remember being so sad that I couldn't get her more. And I had those thoughts. But because of Ellen was there, and she was so happy, that was like my life turning point to where those thoughts ended permanently. And everything was just for her. It was like that was, I said this at the beginning, to where I have from like that moment, that was the turning point moment in my life. That I was like, those thoughts are just gone now. Forever. And they are forever gone. Even I get it now. It's like there was it never even came into my head that I would try to kill myself. That didn't even be a possibility.
Priorities change. It was Hernandez used to always throw something like that. Priorities change, and it actually applies to pretty much everything, especially when you have kids.
Not that it even justifies anything, but it's like...
Any other questions for Sergeant Buck?
Members of the jury, I realize that was a long video, but we'll take the...
All right, so that's going to wrap up our coverage of the Amber Alert murder trial for today. In real time, the jury has gone home. They'll return tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. So let's bring in our guest, attorney Jo-Anna Nieves. And Jo-Anna, I want to talk about, he said something towards the end there of his interview. He says, if you are a veteran, you can understand this. And I believe therein lies the rub. There's this whole PTSD thing. And he says, at the moment that he shot her, it was as a result of PTSD. He heard his daughter crying. His response to that was to eliminate the threat. The threat he thought at that time was the mother. That, to me, seems to be the main focus and problem at the same time for the defense. To get this jury, which I don't know how many veterans are on the jury. Certainly they can't all be veterans.
Agreed.
To get them to understand his line of thinking. And if they do, is it possible he could get off?
So I think the first thing is, right, was there this imminent threat, and would a reasonable person in the same situation have perceived this threat? So, you know, we're not talking about a veteran with PTSD. We're talking about a reasonable person in this situation. I do think it's relevant, and I believe any defense attorney in this situation would highlight the same, because maybe in this situation he has heightened perception of danger and this hypervigilance because of the training that he mentioned. And I think that we need to hear more about it to see if what he perceived could have been interpreted as some forcible act of kidnapping. But what we've heard so far is she was sitting on the couch.
And I think that we are going to, I don't think we're going to necessarily hear from him testifying, but hear more from the defense to see if they do bring that out. Really quickly, what do you think about the fact he finally got emotional? But it wasn't really emotional about saying he shot her. He was emotional for himself. And then we see in court he's been emotional listening to this.
I do think he's a dad who loves his children, and I think that's at the core of it all. I do believe he feared that his children would be taken away from him again, but does that mean that there was a real indication of this threat that a kidnapping was happening?
Yeah, this jury will have a lot. All right, Jo-Anna Nieves, thank you so much for joining us today.
Don't forget to like and share this video, and for more legal insights, keep watching and subscribe to our channel.